Hello, John.
Hello, Oliver.
And today we're going to talk about unemployment and particularly growing vegetables in Ireland. I remember we done a video, I think it was a couple of years ago, where we described why the Irish vegetable grower can't compete. And just to refresh your mind on it and everybody else who's listening, the reason the Irish produce grower can't compete is because if you look at the UK will 60 million people, so they need to have a 10% surplus in the UK all the time. So that 10% surplus is never used of vegetables. So they're brought into Ireland at below cost. And there's enough there in that 10% to feed Ireland. So therefore the Irish person who produces the cabbage, the carrots, they can't compete with that price because it's below cost. And it came back on trucks that went out. The trucks went out with say beef, and they're coming back empty. So they're putting the vegetables onto the trucks, so it's cheap transport as well, and that's why the Irish vegetable grower can't compete. But here we have, I think, hydroponic farming it's called, and that came from the mushroom farming. If you go back 25 years ago, a lot of farmers, vegetable growers, got into mushroom farming. It was a big thing about 25 years ago, but now it's saturated. So now we have hydroponic farming, and that's what we're going to discuss.
Exactly, and this has been developed by an Irish company, and the first one that has done this is a vegetable grower that heretofore grew mushrooms near Ballyporeen, and he's producing every 29 days a crop at far less expense than if you were planting them in a field, and far more successfully, and using much less water. He's able to produce these herbs every 29 days.
They're only grown, they don't use any soil, they're actually only using water.
Correct.
Yeah.
But they have a little root, but the thing is that they are replacing what heretofore had to be imported from countries like even Morocco and other countries that's not actually even in the EU, had to be imported, and the ones that would be using a lot of these would be restaurants and hotels, and when they are able to now be open in a much more proper way and have tourists coming into the country, then this will replace imports, which at the moment the import of fruit and vegetables runs at 146 million euros a year. Mm-hmm. Now that's quite a substantial amount, and this business of the vegetables grown in these former mushroom businesses, the thing about it is this, that it will replace the imports, and eventually let's hope that it can produce onions and other vegetables like that are imported, the like of, for example, cabbage and all these other vegetables. I'm sure that once they're able to do it with these herbs and all the rest of it, these salads and small greens, that they will be able to do it with wider ones, because this will be done much more effectively and fresher than what's imported, because this is why I think the nourishment has gone out of them when they're imported, because they have to be refrigerated. And so it's like some of the apples that you get. Apples in this country used to be the sweetest ones you could wish for, but you get apples now, and sometimes they're kind of nearly enough tasteless. Because
one thing I noticed, because I juice vegetables, and I've always juiced vegetables over the years, there's a big difference between the vegetables, say, in Tesco's and Dunnes than there is in Aldi and Lidl. Aldi and Lidl, all their vegetables are dried out, and some of their potatoes, if you open the bag, there's little shoots growing on them. And that tells me that Aldi and Lidl are storing their fruit and vegetables for probably weeks.
Correct.
They're not fresh.
No, but because they advertise as if they're so much cheaper than anybody else, that they have customers going in and buying these products. And I think that some of their own labelled products, where they're made, could be questionable. I'm not bothered about what other people that are using and shopping in those places, what they say, because if you produce products that look to be practically below cost compared to others, well then they can't be of the same quality. It doesn't matter what people say. They can't be. And I know my late wife had a problem with their Coca-Cola, whatever it was. She was getting stomach pains, and she stopped taking it for one reason or another, just accidentally. They went.
This is little cola.
I think it was Lidl or Aldi. I think it was Lidl. But that's just one example. And so I've never shopped in those, but I know people that do, and they don't shop anywhere else. Whereas I just wouldn't shop in them because I want to get vegetables that I'm fairly sure of, and I find Super Value, generally speaking, good in that area. But there again, I presume a lot of their stuff is imported because they're a monopoly as well. I mean, they have their shops are owned by individuals, but the main crowd in Musgraves are the ones that buy in all the products and then distribute it to their supermarkets and give a good distribution service. But really, I think where the benefit is going to come in for Irish consumers is the fruit and veg shops, because there's still plenty of them, and they do support Irish because they're working in they're part of the local community. You see, in this business of what we were talking about, it was mentioning about the fruit and veg, and even in this article, which was by RTE to their credit, it didn't highlight it, but it said there was too few buyers in the grocery trade. And what I mean was the monopoly situation, where 90% of the grocery trade is in the hands of about 4 or 5 operators. That can't be healthy for the country. And and it leads to unemployment. There could have been a lot more employment, and there will be with this business of what this man in Ballyporeen and this company is supplying the expertise for this. There's great potential there in the horticultural sector to replace imports and to gradually get it across. They'll get the support of the catering trade, hotels and restaurants, etc., and they'll get the support of the fruit and veg stores. I'd have a question mark about the monopoly situation in the grocery trade, the supermarket groups. I'd have a question mark there about them because they have a different agenda. And the solution that I mentioned before, and I'll mention it again in the context of this business of the vegetables and the unemployment, that all these monopolies, it should be self-evident for any government that knows anything about development of food industry to limit their share of the market to 10%. Doesn't matter if they have more than that. They should be limited, max 10%, in the cause of competition, proper competition, not spurious competition, saying I'm cheaper than you at the same crowd, because that means if you're supplying them, you're not making hardly a shilling, and plus you're having to develop, you're having to deal with them on their terms. Mm-hmm. You have to pay for everything. If they give you a bit of space here, there, yonder, you're forking out for the like of that. I mean, you just wouldn't know where your bottom line is. I inquired when I had my business. I went to them to see what they were up to. I had no intention of supplying them, but I wanted to see their terms and all the rest of it. Well, the view I come to was if I gave them to them for nothing, they might be looking for some kind of a long-term agreement. You know, for nothing. Now that's the exaggeration, that's the way I'm putting it, but you would be nuts to be starting a food company and expecting to get any business from them, irrespective of what they say.
Yeah.
Saying and doing things is two different things. There's only one way to deal with them, and that is to limit their share of the market. And then you have a proper market. And divest some of those stores into private ownership, not another monopoly, so that individuals own their stores and can deal with Irish suppliers. Then you have a food industry. And then when you develop that, as Kerrygold now is an international brand, they were able to sort of develop that with the home market and then grow it and then export. And that's the way to do it. You have to have a base to start, and you will not have a base if the grocery trade is in the hands of half a dozen with 90% or thereabouts of the trade. That's a recipe for disaster and unemployment, which we've had down the years, and we still have it.
Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much, Oliver.